The sun is soft, the air is cool, and Sarah wakes up feeling a little excited. She knows today is an important day because she is starting a new English practice routine. She promised herself that she will listen to English every day for at least 10 minutes, but today she wants to do more. She wants to try something new. She wants to speak more, understand more, and feel more confident. She gets out of bed slowly, stretches her arms, and walks to the window. Outside, the street is peaceful. A few people are walking, some children are playing, and a shopkeeper is arranging fruit outside his shop. Everything looks normal, but Sarah feels something different inside.
She feels ready.
She feels curious. She feels a small push inside her heart telling her, "Let's try harder today. Let's learn something new." She goes to the kitchen, makes a warm cup of tea, and sits near the window with her notebook, though she doesn't plan to write much today. She opens her phone and searches for an English listening video. This is something she does almost every morning, but sometimes she feels nervous. She often thinks, what if I don't understand? What if the speaker talks too fast? What if I miss the meaning? But today she tells herself, it's okay. I don't need to understand everything. I only need to try. She presses play on a simple English listening practice. The speaker greets her with a warm voice and says, "Welcome. Today we will learn together." And for the first time in a long time, Sarah doesn't pause the video. She doesn't rewind. She doesn't worry. She just listens quietly. The speaker uses simple words, just like I am using with you right now. And Sarah begins to feel calm. She thinks, this is not too hard. I can do this. I really can. As she listens, she starts repeating some sentences in a very soft voice. She whispers slowly, copying the rhythm and the tone. She knows it doesn't have to be perfect. She knows she only needs to practice. And this small whisper gives her a little confidence. She smiles at herself. She feels proud. After finishing the short listening practice, Sarah closes her eyes and takes a deep breath. She feels something special. She feels like she took one small step forward. And she decides to take another step. She wants to go outside, take a walk, and try listening to English while walking. She heard somewhere that walking while listening helps the brain stay active. So she wears her shoes, puts her phone in her pocket, and steps outside into the morning light. As she walks down the street, she notices everything. The sound of birds, the light breeze, the quiet voices of people talking, the cars passing by slowly. She plays another English audio, something like a simple conversation between two friends talking about their weekend. She listens carefully.
At first, it seems a little fast.
For a moment, she thinks, I can't follow this, but she keeps going. She lets the words flow through her. She doesn't stop walking, she doesn't pause the audio, she just keeps listening. And slowly, the conversation starts to make sense. She hears words she knows. Weekend, friends, coffee, plan, movie. These words help her understand the rest. As she walks farther, she remembers something her teacher once told her. The more you listen, the more you learn without trying. And suddenly she realizes that she is not trying too hard. She is just listening, just enjoying the sounds, and her brain is doing the work for her. She smiles again because she feels proud of herself. She thinks, maybe English is not as hard as I thought. Maybe I can learn this. After a few minutes, she stops near a small park and sits on a bench. She takes another deep breath. This time her heart feels warm. She takes out her notebook and writes only one sentence. I can learn English. I just need time and practice. She looks at the sentence again and again, and each time she reads it, she feels stronger. She closes her notebook and decides to go back home, but she continues listening as she walks. She listens to simple English stories, easy conversations, and short explanations. Some parts she understands very well, and some parts she doesn't understand at all, but she keeps going. She doesn't feel disappointed. She doesn't feel worried. She knows learning takes time. She knows every minute helps. When she reaches home again, she feels like she has done something big. She feels like she made real progress. And she can't wait to continue later in the day. She sits down again, takes a sip of water, and whispers to herself, Today is a good day. Today I learn something new. Today I listen more than ever. Later that same afternoon, Sarah sits quietly by her window again, holding her warm cup of tea. She looks outside and sees the soft sunlight touching the rooftops. The day feels peaceful, but inside her mind, a tiny excitement continues to grow. She keeps thinking about her morning listening practice and how calm and proud she felt. She remembers how she walked through the street, listened to conversations in English, and slowly understood more and more. She thinks, if one morning can feel this good, what will happen if I keep doing this every day? The thought makes her smile, and she feels ready for her next small challenge. She opens her notebook again and turns to a fresh page. She writes the date on top and then writes a simple sentence. This is my English journey. She looks at the words and feels something warm in her chest, something gentle but strong. It almost feels like a promise she is making to herself, a promise that she will keep going, even if the road is slow and long. After resting for a few minutes, Sarah decides to try a different kind of listening practice. This time, she wants to listen to a simple story in English, something easy but full of natural sentences. She opens her phone, scrolls through a list of stories, and finally chooses one called The Lost Key. The title catches her attention because it sounds simple but curious. She taps play, and the narrator begins speaking slowly and clearly. The first sentence she hears is, One morning, a boy named Adam could not find his house key. Sarah listens carefully. She knows the words morning, boy, find, and house, but she pauses for a moment because she is not sure about the word key. She thinks for a second and then remembers that a key is something you use to open a door. She nods her head slowly as the meaning becomes clear in her mind. She continues listening, and the story explains that Adam looked everywhere. Under the table, inside his bag, behind the sofa, even inside the refrigerator because sometimes he forgets things in strange places. Sarah laughs softly because she knows she does the same thing sometimes. She once searched for her glasses for almost 20 minutes and then found them on top of her head. As the story goes on, Sarah hears another new word, worried. The narrator says, Adam felt worried because he had to go to school. Sarah whispers the word to herself. Worried, worried. She closes her eyes and imagines the feeling. She knows the feeling very well because sometimes she also feels worried when she thinks about speaking English with strangers. She lets the words settle inside her mind, like placing a small stone in a quiet lake and watching the ripples spread. She repeats it again, worried, and she feels a quiet satisfaction when the word sounds natural on her tongue. The story continues, and Adam finally finds his key inside his jacket pocket. Sarah smiles because she expected something like that. She thinks, sometimes the answer is close. Sometimes we just don't see it. When the story ends, she sits quietly for a moment, replaying small parts of the narration in her mind. She thinks about the new words, the easy sentences, the soft rhythm. And then she decides to repeat some sentences out loud. She says slowly, "One morning, a boy named Adam could not find his key." She says it again, more confidently this time. Then she whispers, "Adam felt worried." And finally she repeats, "He found the key in his jacket pocket." Each time she repeats a sentence, she feels like her mouth is learning a new dance, a new movement, a new sound. And she thinks, maybe speaking English is not only about knowing words. Maybe it is also about training the mouth and training the ears. She continues practicing like this for a few more minutes, repeating sentences slowly, enjoying the calm feeling of speaking without pressure. And after a while, she feels ready to move on. She closes her notebook gently and decides to take a break. She goes to the kitchen and pours herself some water. As she drinks, she thinks about how different she feels compared to yesterday. Yesterday, she felt unsure, maybe even a little afraid. But today she feels hopeful, like she opened a small door inside herself, a door that leads to a new world of language and possibility. After resting for a few minutes, she sits down again and decides to do something she has never done before. She wants to speak English to herself. She heard someone say that talking to yourself in English is a great way to practice speaking when you don't have anyone to talk to. So she takes a deep breath and starts softly. "Hi, my name is Sarah." She stops and laughs because it feels a little strange. But she tries again. "Hi, my name is Sarah, and I am learning English." She hears her own voice, and instead of feeling shy, she feels curious. She continues, "Today I listened to a story about a boy and his lost key. I understood many parts, and I felt very good." She pauses for a moment because she wants to think about what to say next. She looks at her tea, which is almost cold now, and says, "I think I learn better when I relax." She smiles, realizing that she just made a complete sentence in English without reading anything or copying anyone. She did it on her own, and that small moment gives her a big burst of confidence. As the afternoon turns into evening, Sarah starts thinking about something she learned earlier, the word worried. She wants to understand it more deeply, so she decides to create her own sentence. She whispers, "I feel worried when I have to speak English in front of many people." She pauses. Then she tries another sentence. "I feel worried before an exam." Then another. "Sometimes my mother feels worried when I come home late." She smiles because now the word worried feels natural. It feels like a small tool she can use anytime she needs it. And this small success makes her want to learn another new word. She goes back to the story and picks the word pocket. She says gently, "Pocket, pocket." Then she makes her own sentence. "I keep my phone in my pocket." She makes another. "There is a hole in my pocket." She repeats it slowly, enjoying the simple movement of speaking without stress. During this quiet practice time, Sarah begins to understand something important. She realizes that listening is more than just hearing words. Listening is also about feeling the language, feeling the rhythm, feeling the meaning behind the words. She thinks about how she felt when the narrator said, worried, and how she felt a small emotion inside her chest. She realizes that language is emotional, not just logical. When she feels the meaning, she understands better. And when she understands better, she remembers longer. This makes her want to learn English in a soft and emotional way, not in a hard or stressful way. A little later in the evening, Sarah decides to go for another short walk. The sky is turning orange, and she wants to enjoy the fresh air while listening to one more story. She chooses a story called The Friendly Neighbor, which sounds simple and warm. As she walks, she listens to the narrator say, Mrs. Patel was a kind woman who always smiled at everyone in her neighborhood. Sarah hears the words kind, smiled, and neighborhood, and she understands them. The story continues. Every evening, she watered her flowers and said hello to people walking by. Sarah imagines this woman, friendly and warm, just like someone she knows in her own street. She feels connected to the story because it feels real. It feels like something she has seen in her own life. At one point, the narrator says, one day, the neighborhood cat climbed a tree and could not come down. Sarah hears the word climbed and pauses in her mind. She knows the word climb, but she never heard climbed before. She guesses that it must be the past form of climb. She repeats the sentence softly. The cat climbed a tree. And suddenly, she feels a small joy, like she discovered something by herself. She likes this feeling because it makes her trust her listening skills more. As she continues walking, Sarah listens to the rest of the story. Mrs. Patel helps the cat, the owner thanks her, and everyone in the neighborhood feels happy. The story has no big surprise, but it feels warm and positive. And sometimes, simple stories are the best for learning because they are easy to imagine and easy to remember. Sarah thinks, I want to listen to more stories like this. When she returns home, the sky is darker now, and the street lights are glowing softly. She sits on her bed and feels tired but proud. She thinks about her day. The morning walk, the story about Adam and the lost key, the word practice, the evening story, and her soft speaking practice. She feels like she did more English practice today than she ever did in one day before. And the best part is that none of it felt heavy or difficult. It all felt natural, calm, and gentle. Before going to sleep, she decides to review the words she learned today. She whispers softly, worried, pocket climbed. She repeats each word slowly, feeling the shape of the sounds. And then she thinks of something important. She thinks about how she still does not understand everything she hears and how sometimes the words feel too fast. But instead of feeling sad, she smiles and tells herself, it's okay. I don't need to understand everything today. I just need to understand a little more than yesterday. She lies down in bed and pulls her blanket over her. She feels peaceful. She knows that tomorrow she will listen again. She will speak again.
She will learn again.
And slowly, step by step, she will become fluent. She closes her eyes and whispers a small promise to herself. I will not give up. I will learn English, one gentle day at a time. And with that soft thought in her mind, she falls asleep, ready for a new day of listening, learning, and growing. The next morning, Sarah wakes up slowly as the sunlight gently enters her room and rests softly on her face. She stretches her arms and smiles because she already remembers the promise she made to herself last night. She said she would not give up and she would learn English step by step, gently and patiently. That small promise becomes her first thought of the day, and it fills her with hope and a soft excitement. She sits up in bed, looks around her quiet room, and feels thankful for another day to learn something new. She whispers to herself, "Today is a new chance. Today I can learn again." She gets out of bed, washes her face, and prepares her morning tea. The warm smell rises slowly, and she holds the cup close to her chest as she sits near the window again. The morning air feels soft, and everything outside looks calm. She takes a deep breath and decides that today she wants to try listening to something slightly longer than yesterday. Yesterday's stories were short and easy, but today she feels ready for something a little more challenging, not too hard, but just enough to help her grow. She picks up her phone and searches for simple English listening long story. She finds one called "The Day I Learned Something Important." The title sounds interesting because it feels personal, like someone is sharing their real experience. She taps play and listens as the narrator begins with a warm voice saying, "When I was young, I thought learning was always difficult, but one special day changed my mind." Sarah feels immediately pulled into the story. She smiles because she loves stories that begin with a small mystery, something that makes her want to know more. The narrator continues slowly. "I was sitting in my classroom when my teacher asked us to stand and speak about our favorite hobby." Sarah hears the words classroom, teacher, and hobby, and she understands them clearly. Then she hears, "I felt nervous because I did not like speaking in front of people." Sarah nods because she knows exactly how that feels. She thinks, "I also feel nervous when I speak English in front of anyone." She listens more carefully now, almost feeling like the story is talking directly to her. The narrator continues, "But then something happened. A friend sitting behind me whispered, 'You can do it. Just speak slowly.'" Sarah feels the meaning deeply. She whispers the sentence to herself, "You can do it. Just speak slowly." She likes how gentle and encouraging it sounds. She repeats it again and again because she knows she can use this sentence in her own life. She can even say it to herself whenever she feels afraid. She feels her heart warming up again. She loves discovering sentences that feel like little pieces of motivation. As the story goes on, the narrator explains how he stood up, spoke about his hobby, and realized that speaking slowly helped him feel calm and confident. He ends the story by saying, "That day taught me that confidence grows when we try, even if we feel afraid." Sarah repeats this sentence softly. Confidence grows when we try. She lets the meaning sit in her heart. She thinks, "Yes, that is true. I do not need to be perfect. I only need to try." She listens to the story one more time, and this time she focuses on the new vocabulary. She hears the word whispered again and decides to practice it. She says softly, "Whispered, whispered." Then she makes a sentence, "My friend whispered something to me." She tries another. "I whispered because I did not want others to hear." She smiles because the sentence makes sense, and she imagines herself speaking English more confidently one day. After finishing the story, Sarah decides to practice shadowing. Shadowing means repeating what she hears immediately after the speaker says it. She plays a small part of the audio again and repeats the first sentence slowly. She says, "When I was young, I thought learning was always difficult." She repeats it several times, each time sounding a little clearer. Then she says, "But one special day changed my mind." She tries to copy the rhythm of the speaker, the soft tone, the natural flow of words. She likes this technique because it feels like she is practicing speaking without worrying too much about what to say. She only needs to follow the speaker. After practicing for almost 20 minutes, she takes a deep breath and feels a little tired but happy. She thinks, "I worked hard today." She returns her phone to the table and lifts her cup of tea, taking a slow sip. The tea is warm and calming. She looks outside again and feels peaceful. She knows she is making progress, even if she doesn't see it clearly every day. Progress sometimes feels invisible, but she believes it is happening inside her mind. A little later, after breakfast, Sarah decides to go outside again for her routine walk. The sky is bright, and the road is lively with people going to work, children going to school, and shops opening their doors. She plugs in her earphones and chooses a simple English conversation practice. The audio begins with two friends talking. The first friend says, "Hey, how was your weekend?" The second friend replies, "It was good. I visited my aunt and ate some homemade food." Sarah listens closely. She loves hearing natural conversations because they help her understand how people talk in real life. She repeats after them softly, "How was your weekend?" She tries to match the tone. Then she whispers, "It was good." She continues shadowing as she walks past a small grocery shop and hears the owner greeting people. She feels surrounded by both real-life sounds and English sounds, and the mix feels nice. At one point, the conversation uses a new word, relaxed. One friend says, "I relaxed at home on Sunday." Sarah hears the word and understands it immediately because it sounds like something she already knows. She repeats, "Relaxed, relaxed," and makes her own sentence. "I relaxed yesterday after my walk." She smiles because words feel easier today. They do not feel heavy or confusing. They feel friendly, like small pieces of a puzzle she is learning to put together. She continues walking until she reaches the small park. Children are playing, some old people are sitting on benches, and a little dog is running around happily. She sits down and decides to listen to the same conversation again. This time she tries to understand more details. She pays attention to how the speakers pause, how they ask questions, how they laugh softly during the conversation. She thinks about how natural their tone is and how different it sounds from English in textbooks. She realizes something. Real English is alive. It is full of emotion, rhythm, and movement. After finishing her listening practice in the park, she closes her eyes for a moment and breathes slowly. She feels grateful for this time. She feels grateful that she can listen, understand, and grow. She thinks about her journey and how every day feels slightly different, but always meaningful. She opens her eyes and decides to practice speaking again. She looks at a small flower near her feet and begins talking to herself softly. "Today I listened to a conversation about two friends and their weekend. They talked about relaxing at home and visiting family. I understood most of it." She stops and smiles because she is forming sentences naturally now. She feels comfortable, not nervous. As she walks back home, She thinks about how learning English is not just about language, it is also about learning herself. Learning her strengths, her fears, her hopes. She realizes that each time she listens, she is not only learning English, she is also learning patience. Each time she repeats a sentence, she is learning confidence. And each time she understands a new word, she is learning that her mind is capable of growing in gentle ways. When she reaches home, she decides to take a short break. She sits on her bed and drinks a glass of water. As she relaxes, she reflects on something important. She realizes that she did not feel worried today at all. She thinks, yesterday I practiced the word worried and today I didn't feel it. She laughs softly because she knows learning can sometimes surprise us like that. She learned the word worried, but today she felt the opposite. She felt peaceful and confident. She whispers to herself, maybe the more I listen, the less I worry. A little later, she decides to start a new exercise, describing her day in English. She picks up her notebook and writes a simple line. Describe your day. She looks at the sentence and begins speaking slowly. Today I woke up early. I listened to a long story. I learned new words like whispered and relaxed. I walked in the park. I felt happy. Each sentence she speaks makes her feel more confident because she is using English to talk about her real life, not a lesson or a textbook example. It feels natural and personal. As the day continues, Sarah practices a little more, repeating sentences, listening to short clips, and writing a few new phrases. She feels productive but also calm. She knows she does not need to rush. She knows learning takes time, and she is okay with that. When evening comes, she takes a quiet moment to reflect on her progress again. She whispers softly, confidence grows when we try. And she smiles, knowing she tried with all her heart today. With a peaceful mind and a hopeful heart, she ends the day feeling proud, strong, and ready for tomorrow. In this part of our story, the day continues, and Emma's English learning journey takes another small but meaningful step forward. After finishing her morning class, Emma walks outside the language center. The weather is warm, and the sky is bright blue. She takes a deep breath and feels a little proud of herself. She did well in the class today. She spoke more, she listened carefully, and she tried to understand every sentence. Small progress, but still progress. As she walks down the street, she sees a small cafe on the corner. The cafe has a friendly sign that says, "Coffee and Friends." Emma smiles. She decides to go inside. She thinks, maybe I can practice my English here too. She pushes the door open, and a soft bell rings above her head. Inside, the cafe is cozy and quiet. There are plants near the window, soft music playing, and a few people working on their laptops. Emma walks to the counter. A barista with a warm smile looks at her and says, "Hello, how can I help you?" Emma feels a little nervous. Ordering in English is still difficult for her, but she reminds herself this is a good chance to practice. Don't worry, just speak slowly. She says, "Hello, I want one coffee. Medium, please." The barista nods happily and says, "Of course. Would you like milk or sugar?" Emma thinks for a moment. She answers, "Yes, little sugar. No milk." The barista writes it down and says, "Great. Please take a seat. I will bring it to you." Emma feels relieved. She did it. She ordered her coffee completely in English. It wasn't perfect, but it was clear. And the barista understood her. That gives her a small boost of confidence. She sits near the window and takes out her notebook. She starts to write down a few new English words she learned today. She writes slowly and carefully. She whispers the pronunciation to herself. She loves doing this because it helps her remember better. While she works, the barista brings her coffee and says, "Here you go." Emma thanks him and says, "Thank you very much." The barista replies, "You're welcome. Enjoy." As she sips her coffee, she watches people walking outside. Some are talking on the phone. Some are laughing. Some are in a hurry. Emma listens closely to little pieces of English conversations around her. She tries to understand small sentences. This is one of her favorite ways to practice. Real-life English. Natural English. She hears one person say, "I'll call you back." Another person says, "See you later." Emma repeats the phrases quietly to herself. She tries to learn the rhythm, the sound, the flow. She feels like her listening skills are growing little by little. After some time, Emma notices someone walking into the cafe. It is the same nervous student from her class, the tall guy who also struggles with pronunciation. He notices Emma too and gives a shy smile. He walks closer and says, "Hi, you from class, right?" His English is not perfect, but Emma understands him. She smiles and nods.
Yes.
"I am from the morning class." He laughs a little and says, "I am bad at English." Emma shakes her head. "No, you're learning." "I am learning too." The guy sits down and the two of them talk slowly. They help each other find the right words. They correct each other kindly. They laugh when they make mistakes. And soon, the nervous feeling disappears. For Emma, this moment is important. It shows her something new. Learning English is not something she has to do alone. There are other people who feel the same way. Other people who struggle. Other people who want to practice. And together, practice becomes easier, more fun, and less scary. The cafe feels warm. The conversation feels friendly. And Emma feels hopeful. After spending some time talking in the cafe, Emma gathers her things and gets ready to leave, waving goodbye to her classmate before stepping outside into the warm afternoon sun where the streets seem a little busier than before. And as she begins walking home slowly, she thinks about her day and feels proud because she practiced speaking, she listened to real conversations, and she met someone who also wants to improve his English, which makes the whole day feel meaningful to her. While walking, she decides to stop by a small bookstore she likes, a quiet place filled with soft, warm light and shelves that smell like old paper, and she goes directly to the English learning section where she finds simple storybooks, vocabulary books, grammar books, and English magazines, all arranged neatly. She picks up a very simple storybook called A Day in the City and flips through a few pages, smiling because she can understand almost every sentence, something that was impossible for her a few years ago, and this small moment reminds her how far she has come in her journey. As she stands there reading, an elderly man who works in the bookstore comes toward her with a gentle smile and asks if she likes learning English, and Emma nods shyly and says she tries every day. So the man tells her that learning a little bit every day is the best way, and that slow and steady learning is better than rushing, and his soft words make Emma feel calmer and more relaxed. She buys the book and thanks the man before walking home again, feeling excited to read the story later because she plans to read one page every night and maybe write new vocabulary in her notebook, turning her learning into a routine that makes her feel safe and confident. When she arrives home, she takes off her shoes, drinks some water, sits on the sofa, opens the book, and reads the first page out loud slowly and clearly, letting herself enjoy the sound of her own voice speaking English, even though it still feels strange to her. After reading, she takes her notebook and writes the new words she learned today and makes simple sentences with them, then reads each sentence twice, reminding herself that she is not perfect, but she is improving little by little, and that is enough. In the evening, she receives a message from her classmate from the morning class who thanks her for talking and says he feels better, and Emma smiles and replies that she also feels good and suggests practicing together again. And for the first time in a long time, she feels excited about learning because she can see her own progress, and she is finally enjoying the journey instead of worrying about the result. The next morning, Emma wakes up early with a calm and warm feeling in her chest, and as she stretches her arms, she remembers the message from her classmate last night and feels a small wave of excitement because it has been a long time since she looked forward to practicing English with someone. So she gets out of bed slowly and begins her morning routine, washing her face, brushing her hair, and making a simple breakfast of toast and tea, all while thinking about how she can improve herself.
Today.
She sits near the window where the soft morning light enters the room and opens her notebook to read the sentences she wrote yesterday, whispering them softly to herself, and she feels surprised that the words sound a little easier today, almost like her mouth is getting used to forming English sounds more smoothly. After breakfast, she checks her phone and sees a new message from her classmate, inviting her to join an online English study group later in the evening, and Emma hesitates for a moment because she feels shy about speaking in a group, but then she remembers how proud she felt yesterday and decides to be brave, replying with a simple, "Yes, I will join." The whole day, she feels a mix of excitement and nervousness, thinking about meeting new people who also want to improve their English, and she wonders what they will talk about, whether she will understand everything, and whether she can speak without freezing, but she reminds herself that everyone in the group is learning, and no one expects perfection. She goes to her afternoon class at the community center where the teacher talks about common daily expressions, and Emma listens carefully, repeating the short expressions in her mind, trying to memorize the natural rhythm of the sentences because she knows rhythm is important when speaking fluently. After class, she walks home slowly, rehearsing the expressions under her breath like, "How's it going? Sounds good." And "I'm not sure." And each time she repeats them, she feels a little more confident. When evening comes, she gets ready for the online meeting, sitting at her desk with her notebook, her pen, and a glass of water, and she takes a deep breath before clicking the join button. The screen fills with faces of people from different countries, all smiling shyly, and the group leader welcomes everyone in a friendly, slow voice, which makes Emma feel more relaxed. When it is her turn to introduce herself, her heart beats fast, but she speaks slowly, saying her name, her city, and her reason for learning English. And when she finishes, she hears a few people say, "Nice to meet you," and "Welcome," which makes her smile with relief. The group begins a simple speaking activity where each person shares something small about their day, and Emma listens carefully, noticing different accents and different ways of speaking, and she realizes that English has many sounds and styles, and that she doesn't need to speak perfectly to be understood. When her turn comes, she talks about buying the new book yesterday and how she is trying to read a little every night, and the group listens kindly and even encourages her to keep reading. By the end of the session, Emma feels lighter and happier because she has spoken in front of strangers and nothing bad happened. And in fact, she learned new words, heard new accents, and made new connections. She says goodbye to the group and closes her laptop, feeling proud and grateful for the small courage she found today. And she thinks that maybe joining this study group could become a new routine for her, something that will help her become more confident day by day. And as she prepares for bed, she whispers to herself, "I can do this," believing it a little more each time. The next day begins quietly for Emma, but inside her heart there is a new kind of energy, a gentle excitement that pushes her forward. And as she gets ready for her day, she keeps thinking about the online study group from last night and how safe and friendly it felt, almost like a small community where everyone understands the same struggles and wants the same thing, to become better at English little by little. She leaves her home and walks to the community center again, the morning air cool on her face, and she thinks about how different her life felt only a few weeks ago, when she used to feel alone in her learning, unsure and afraid to speak. But now something has changed because she has met new people who support her, and she has started to believe that she truly can improve. When she reaches the center, the classroom is already filling with students, and the teacher greets her with a warm smile and says they will practice real-life conversations today, something Emma both enjoys and fears, because speaking in real situations still makes her nervous. But she wants to grow, so she tries her best to stay relaxed. The teacher divides everyone into pairs and gives them a simple situation to act out, like ordering food at a restaurant or asking for directions in a city, and Emma is paired with a girl named Lila who speaks slowly and kindly, making Emma feel comfortable right away. They begin their practice with soft voices, repeating short sentences the teacher gives them, and even though Emma makes small mistakes, Lila gently corrects her and says she is doing great, which fills Emma with courage to keep going. When it is Emma's turn to lead the conversation, she hesitates for a second, but then remembers her positive experience from yesterday and decides to speak loudly enough so her partner can hear her clearly, and her voice, although shaky, feels stronger than before. After class, the teacher comes to her and says she has improved a lot in confidence, and even though the words are simple, they feel like a warm light inside Emma's chest. She leaves the building with a smile, taking a slow walk through a nearby park, where children are playing, birds are singing softly, and the sound of leaves moving in the wind makes her feel peaceful. She sits on a bench, closes her eyes for a moment, and repeats some of the sentences she practiced earlier, letting them settle gently in her mind. As she opens her eyes, she notices an older woman sitting nearby who looks at Emma and says hello in English, perhaps trying to practice too, and Emma smiles and replies politely. The woman begins a short conversation, asking simple questions like where Emma is from and how long she has been learning English, and Emma answers slowly, feeling surprisingly calm, noticing that her words flow just a little easier today. The woman thanks her and says it was nice talking, and Emma feels proud because she just had an unexpected conversation in English with a stranger, something she never imagined herself doing even a month ago. On her way home, she stops at a small market to buy fruit, and while standing in line, she quietly whispers new vocabulary she learned today, trying to make the sounds familiar to her tongue, and she realizes that English is slowly becoming a natural part of her daily life rather than something separate or scary. After reaching home, she eats her fruit, opens her notebook, and writes a few lines about her day in simple English, not worrying about perfect grammar, just writing to practice expressing her thoughts. She ends her little journal entry by writing that she is proud of herself for trying, for speaking, for learning, and she closes her notebook with a soft smile, feeling a calm happiness she hasn't felt in a long time. As evening comes, she receives a reminder for the next online study meeting, and instead of feeling nervous, she feels excited because now she knows she belongs there. She has a place where she can speak, listen, grow, and slowly build the confidence she once thought she would never have. The day ends with Emma lying on her bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how small steps can bring big changes, and she whispers quietly to herself, "Tomorrow I will try again," believing fully that each new day will take her one step closer to the English speaker she dreams of becoming. The following morning arrives with soft sunlight spilling through Emma's window, and she wakes up feeling rested and quietly hopeful, as if each new day now carries a gentle promise that she will learn something useful, meet someone supportive, or discover a new piece of confidence inside herself, and this feeling makes her get out of bed with a small smile. She prepares a simple breakfast and thinks about her growing routine, how English has slowly become a natural part of her morning, whether she is whispering new words, reading a few lines from her book, or replaying last night's study session in her mind. And she likes how learning now feels less like a heavy task and more like a peaceful habit. After she finishes eating, she decides to practice listening by playing a short English podcast while she gets ready, and she listens carefully to the slow, friendly voices talking about everyday routines like cooking, shopping, and meeting friends. And even though she doesn't understand every single word, she understands enough to follow the story, which makes her feel proud because it reminds her that her ears are getting stronger day by day. She heads out to her afternoon class at the community center, walking through the quiet streets and repeating small expressions under her breath like, "I agree," "That makes sense," and "Let me think," practicing the rhythm and tone, trying to make them feel natural in her voice. At the center, the teacher announces they will practice a longer conversation today, something that feels more like real life. And Emma feels a mix of excitement and nervousness because she knows it will challenge her, but she wants to grow, so she takes a deep breath and prepares herself. She is paired with Lila again, who gives her an encouraging smile, and together they begin practicing a conversation about planning a day trip to another city, taking turns suggesting ideas, asking questions, and making small comments. And although Emma makes mistakes, she keeps going because she realizes the important thing is not perfection but communication. At one point, she uses the wrong tense, and Lila gently corrects her. And instead of feeling embarrassed, Emma feels grateful because now she knows the right way to say it, and she feels happy for learning something new. After class, the teacher gives them a small homework task to write a short paragraph about a place they want to visit, and Emma decides she will write about the peaceful park she walked through yesterday, so she walks home with the image already forming in her mind. When she reaches home, she makes a cup of tea, sits at her desk, and begins writing slowly, choosing simple words, trying to express the feeling of peace she experienced in the park. And though it takes time, she enjoys the process because she can see herself forming sentences more easily now. Later in the evening, she joins the online English study group again, feeling comfortable as familiar faces appear on the screen. And today's activity is about describing experiences, so everyone takes turns sharing something interesting that happened to them recently. When Emma's turn comes, She talks about her conversation with the older woman in the park and how surprised she was that she could speak without freezing, and the group members cheer her on, saying that speaking with strangers is a big step in language learning, and hearing their support makes Emma feel warm inside. After the meeting ends, her classmate messages her again, telling her she did well and that he can see she is improving, and Emma feels touched because for many years she doubted herself, but now she is hearing real encouragement from real people, which helps her believe in her progress. She closes her phone and spends a moment reflecting on the day, realizing she practiced listening, speaking, writing, and reading, all without forcing herself too hard, and she whispers softly that learning English is becoming a journey she actually enjoys. As she prepares for bed, she looks at her notebook on the desk and feels proud knowing that tomorrow she will open it again, write something new, speak something new, and continue building the confident version of herself she always dreamed of becoming, and this calm, steady progress makes her fall asleep with a peaceful heart. The next day begins with a soft, cloudy sky, and Emma wakes up feeling a little slower than usual, not tired, just peaceful, as if her mind is slowly absorbing all the small steps she has been taking these past days. And she lies in bed for a moment thinking about her learning journey and how different she feels now compared to when she first started. She gets up, washes her face, and makes a warm cup of tea, holding the mug gently as she looks out the window at the quiet street below, and she thinks about how every single day, no matter how small the progress is, she is becoming more comfortable with English. After breakfast, she opens her notebook and reads her homework paragraph from yesterday, noticing small mistakes, but also noticing how much more confident her sentences sound. And instead of feeling stressed, she feels motivated to write a new paragraph today. She decides to listen to the same English podcast again, but this time she listens more carefully, trying to catch the small details she missed before, and she smiles when she understands a sentence she didn't understand yesterday, realizing that repetition is helping her brain grow stronger. Later in the afternoon, she heads to the community center, walking slowly through the fresh, cool air, and as she walks, she practices a few new expressions she learned last night from the study group, whispering them gently, letting the rhythm become natural in her voice. When she arrives at the class, the teacher announces that today they will practice small talk, those simple conversations people have in daily life, and though this idea used to scare Emma in the past, now she feels curious because she knows that small talk is an important part of real communication. The teacher gives them different topics like weather, hobbies, weekend plans, and daily routines, and Emma practices with different students, smiling when she understands them and laughing softly when she makes tiny mistakes, because now she knows mistakes don't mean failure, they mean learning. One student tells her that her pronunciation has improved, and hearing that makes Emma feel a warm burst of happiness, because she's been practicing out loud every day, and now she can see that her effort is showing. After class, she walks to her favorite cafe, the same one where she talked with the tall boy a few days ago, and she orders a warm drink in English, noticing that her voice does not shake as much anymore, and she does not need to repeat every word in her mind before speaking. She sits by the window and takes out her book, A Day in the City, reading one more page slowly, enjoying the pictures and simple sentences, and she feels proud that she can almost read without stopping. While reading, she receives a message from the study group leader reminding everyone about a special speaking event happening tonight, where each person will share a short 1-minute story about something meaningful to them, and Emma's heart beats a little faster at the thought of speaking in front of the whole group. But instead of fear, she feels a growing excitement because she knows this is another chance to challenge herself and grow. She decides to talk about her journey with English, not the whole story, just a small moment. Maybe the moment she talked with the older woman in the park, or the moment she bought her first English storybook, and she begins practicing her story quietly in the cafe, speaking softly, choosing simple words, telling the memory in a calm rhythm. When evening comes, she returns home, turns on her laptop, and joins the meeting, feeling the familiar mix of nervousness and courage. And when her turn comes, she speaks slowly, telling her small story with a warm voice, and even though her heart is beating fast, she keeps going until the end. The group members clap and tell her she spoke clearly and bravely, and Emma feels her whole chest fill with light because she never imagined she would speak confidently in front of a group one day. After the meeting, and she sits quietly on her bed, holding her notebook, thinking about how far she has come, and she realizes that her journey is not just about learning English, but also about learning to believe in herself. The night feels calm, and Emma puts her hand over her notebook and smiles softly, whispering to herself that tomorrow she will continue, tomorrow she will practice again, and tomorrow she will take another small step on this long but beautiful path. The next morning, Emma wakes up to a quiet room filled with soft light from the sun, and she stretches her arms slowly, feeling calm and ready to start another day of learning, thinking about all the small achievements from the past week and how every effort, even tiny, has helped her grow a little more. She makes a cup of warm tea and sits near the window, watching people walk along the street, noticing how everyone seems busy with their lives, and she whispers softly to herself, "I will practice today little by little," remembering that patience is important in learning. After finishing her tea, she opens her notebook to review yesterday's notes, repeating the new words and sentences out loud, feeling her tongue moving more easily with the sounds of English, and she smiles because repetition is slowly making English feel familiar and friendly. Later, she decides to practice listening by playing a new English podcast she found about daily routines, and she listens carefully as the speaker talks about waking up, making breakfast, going to work, and meeting friends, noticing small phrases like, "I usually start my day," and "I like to relax," and she repeats them softly to herself, letting the words sink into her memory. When it is time to go to the community center, she walks slowly through the fresh morning air, whispering little expressions under her breath, practicing "good morning," "how are you?" and "I agree," noticing how much smoother her voice sounds compared to when she first started. At class, the teacher begins a longer conversation exercise, asking students to imagine planning a weekend activity with friends, and Emma is paired with Lila again, who gives her a warm smile that makes her feel comfortable. They take turns asking questions and giving suggestions such as, "Do you want to go to the park?" or "Shall we have a picnic?" And Emma listens carefully, repeating words in her mind before speaking, slowly building confidence with every sentence. When she makes a mistake, Lila gently corrects her, and instead of feeling embarrassed, Emma laughs softly and tries again, realizing mistakes are part of learning, not something to fear. After class, she walks to her favorite cafe, enjoying the warm atmosphere, ordering a drink in English, and noticing that she no longer feels nervous speaking to the barista, her voice steady and polite, making her feel proud of her progress. She takes a seat by the window, opens her storybook, and reads a page quietly, whispering the sentences to herself and imagining the scenes in her mind, feeling joy in understanding the story without stopping too often. Later, she checks her phone and sees a reminder for tonight's online study group, feeling a mix of nervousness and excitement about sharing her experience with the group, and she decides to prepare a short story about a small moment from her day, perhaps something she did while practicing at the cafe or a sentence she successfully repeated from the podcast. As evening comes, she joins the group, sees the familiar faces of her classmates, and when it is her turn, she speaks slowly and clearly, sharing her small story with confidence, and the group reacts with encouragement and praise, making her feel proud and happy inside. After the meeting, she sits on her bed, reflecting quietly on her day, noticing that she practiced listening, speaking, reading, and writing all in one day, and even though it was not perfect, it was real practice, and every effort counts. She whispers softly to herself before going to sleep, "Tomorrow I will try again. Tomorrow I will learn more," feeling a calm sense of achievement and a growing excitement for the journey ahead, knowing that each small step is taking her closer to becoming the confident English speaker she dreams of being. The next morning, Emma wakes up feeling a quiet excitement inside her chest. The kind of feeling that comes from knowing she is slowly building something important, and as she stretches and opens her eyes to the soft sunlight filling her room, she smiles because each new day feels like a chance to learn and grow a little more. She goes through her morning routine slowly, washing her face, brushing her teeth, and making a warm cup of tea, all the while thinking about the lessons from yesterday and the encouragement she received from the online study group, remembering that even small steps matter and every word she practices adds to her confidence. After finishing her tea, she opens her notebook and reviews the new words she wrote last night, repeating each sentence softly to herself, letting the words feel natural in her mouth, and feeling proud that she can now say them more easily than a few days ago. Later, she decides to practice listening again by playing a short English story, listening carefully to the clear, slow voice of the narrator who tells a story about a person going to a new city, meeting people, and learning small lessons about kindness and courage, and Emma repeats small sentences after the narrator, whispering, "I felt nervous, but I tried, and it is okay to make mistakes," letting these sentences become part of her daily thoughts. When it is time to go to the community center, she walks through the streets, practicing a few expressions softly under her breath, like, "Can you help me?" "I would like," and "What do you think?" Noticing how her voice sounds smoother and more confident with every repetition, and feeling happy because practicing like this makes her ready for real conversations. At class, the teacher introduces a new activity where students pair up and imagine planning a trip to the park or a cafe, and Emma is paired with Lila again, who smiles encouragingly, making Emma feel comfortable to speak. They take turns asking questions and giving ideas, and even when Emma forgets a word or uses the wrong tense, she tries again, laughs softly at herself, and learns from the moment, realizing that mistakes are signs of learning, not failure. After class, Emma walks to the small cafe she loves, orders a warm drink in English without hesitation, and sits by the window while repeating sentences from her storybook, imagining the scenes and speaking them softly to herself, enjoying the sound of her own voice and the rhythm of the English words. Later in the evening, she joins the online study group for another session, listening to her classmates' stories and sharing her own about a small challenge she faced while practicing, speaking slowly and clearly, and the group responds with kind words and smiles, which makes Emma feel proud and motivated. After the meeting ends, she sits quietly on her bed, reflecting on the day, realizing she practiced reading, writing, listening, and speaking, and that each effort, no matter how small, is helping her grow. She writes a short note in her notebook about her feelings, smiles softly, and whispers to herself before falling asleep. Tomorrow I will try again. Tomorrow I will learn more, feeling calm, happy, and excited for the journey ahead, knowing that each day is taking her closer to becoming a confident English speaker and a braver version of herself. The next morning, Emma wakes up feeling peaceful and happy, a quiet excitement in her chest because she knows she has learned so much and grown a little stronger each day. And as she stretches and sits by the window with a warm cup of tea, she thinks about everything she has experienced on her journey so far, the small victories, the mistakes that taught her lessons, the kind words from classmates and strangers, and the moments when she felt nervous, but tried anyway. She remembers the first time she spoke in the cafe, the first time she joined the online study group, and the first page she read from her storybook, and she smiles softly, because now those moments feel like stepping stones that brought her closer to feeling confident in English and in herself. Today, she decides to spend a quiet morning practicing listening, reading, and speaking, repeating sentences slowly, whispering new words softly, and imagining herself in the real situations she will face in the future, and she notices how calm and patient she feels, how natural English is beginning to feel in her daily life, and how the fear of mistakes has started to disappear. Later in the afternoon, she goes for a walk in the park, thinking about her friends in the study group and the teacher who encourages her every day, and she decides to speak aloud about her day, describing the simple things she notices, the trees, the sounds of children laughing, the rhythm of life around her, and she speaks slowly, clearly, and without worrying about being perfect, feeling proud of how much courage she has built over time. In the evening, she joins the online group one last time for today, sharing a short story about the small victories she experienced, and as her classmates listen, smile, and encourage her, Emma realizes that learning English is not only about words and sentences, it is about patience, practice, courage, and believing in herself even when it feels difficult. She closes her laptop and sits quietly for a moment, reflecting on her journey, understanding that every day of listening, speaking, reading, and writing has added up to something bigger than she could see before, and she whispers to herself, "Learning is a journey, and every step matters." Before going to sleep, she writes a few sentences in her notebook about what she has learned, not just English words, but also lessons about trying, practicing, and being kind to herself, and she smiles softly, feeling calm, proud, and ready for tomorrow. As she lies down, she remembers the sentences that have inspired her throughout her journey. Confidence grows when we try. It is okay to make mistakes, and a little every day brings big changes. And she realizes these are truths not only for learning English, but for life itself. Emma closes her eyes with a soft smile, knowing that she will continue, that each new day will bring more chances to grow, more words to learn, more moments to practice courage, and she feels peaceful because she has learned that success does not come from perfection but from trying, practicing, and believing in herself. And with that thought, she falls asleep, ready to wake up tomorrow for another small but meaningful step on her journey.